we've been studying about what God has instructed Ezekiel to do in order to show the people as a sign of and prophecy through their actions. And so today he said, shave your head and beard. To us it may not mean much, but in today's passage we will go through one by one the instructions, the detailed instructions of what God told Ezekiel to do. So as an introduction, cannot really see the number, you can imagine the number as number one, introduction. First, take a sharp sword and use it as a barber's razor on your head and beard. Okay. So it says, take a sharp sword and use it as a barber's razor. Have you ever tried to cut your hair with a sword or a kitchen knife? What would it feel like?
Painful.
Painful. It would tear off your hair off of your head. But he said, can you imagine this man with long hair and beard using a big sword to shave off his head? Probably saw some blood. If men, you will know, even if you have a sharp razor, sometimes it hurts to shave yourself. But secondly, it said, take scales for weighing and divide the hair. Okay? So cut off your hair and then your beard, and you have to gather the hair, and then take scales and for weighing and divide the hair. And then it said, 1/3 you shall burn it in fire, 1/3 strike it with a sword. So you can kind of imagine, throw the hair like a baseball with a sword, strike it, right? And 1/3 scatter to the wind. Ezekiel chapter 5 verse 2, it says, Ezekiel 25:2, it says, 1/3 you shall burn in fire at the center of the city. Then the days of siege are when the days of siege are completed, when you shall take 1/3, then you shall take 1/3 and strike it with a sword all around the city, and 1/3 you shall scatter to the wind, and I will unsheath a sword behind them. Fourth, take a few from them and bind them in the edges of your robes. So take a few, so 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That should be all at 100%. But from there, save a few and put it in the cloth and edges of your robes and put it in there. So what does that all mean? Redemptive significance. Redemptive historical lesson. Take a sharp sword and use it as a barber's razor and on your head and beard. What does that mean? First, head or hair and beard is a sign of priesthood. So during that time, it was remember Psalm 133, I think. 133 speaks about Aaron's beard, right? Oil and dew from Mount Hermon coming down, and as oil flows down Aaron's beard. Sign of authority and priesthood, just like Samson. You can think about Samson. The power and authority comes from the hair and the beard. And so the priests were not to really shave or cut their hair. And so that represents not only Ezekiel, who was of the priestly lineage, not only of his personal identity, but of Israel's identity. God chose Israel as a priestly nation to officiate and to bridge between God and the rest of the people. I think I mentioned this before. In the Hebraic Semitic understanding, there were two ways to communicate with God. Okay? God speaks to the people through the prophets. Prophets were mouthpiece of God. So prophets spoke to the people, speaking the words of God. Then how do you respond to God? You respond to God through the priest. Priests bring the offerings from the people to God. So prophets and priests were the ways of communication with God for the people. And so God chose Israel as a priestly nation to represent the rest of the world, all mankind. But to cut off the hair and shave off the beard, what would that mean? Would you think? Losing that privilege, losing that authority, losing the privilege as the chosen, elect, priestly authority. Second, a sharp sword, like a razor, represents Babylon's army with the sword coming down, taking away and destroying the authority that God had given to Israel. So there's no more distinction between Israel and the Gentiles. There's no more privilege as God's people, elect people of God. Just like the hair being cut off and thrown away or thrown, Israel will be cut off by the sword of Babylon, and which will cause great pain, and they will lose the privilege of worshiping God. That was the role and duty of the priests. Second, it said to weigh and divide. Weigh the hair and divide. Weigh means to judge or to measure. Remember when in Daniel chapter 5, verse 25, the inscription of the finger on the wall said, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Tekel means to weigh. It means you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. And this weighing is not just weighing your physical weight. It's weighing the weight of faith, the weight of your soul and spirit. So God says, can you see this is a process of judgment, which will also take place in the end time for us, right? For those who are disobedient, first God will cut them, and all the privilege will be gone, and then they will be weighed and divided. What is weighed? Actions are weighed. Our actions are weighed. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 3. Boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. Let us remember, our actions are weighed. Where do our actions come from? What causes me to move my hand? Yeah. What controls my head? What causes my head to give instruction to my body? It's my belief. It's the center of my thought and processing. So let us remember that our actions are weighed. We might want to say, oh, that was my mistake. But our actions are weighed because our actions do come from our subconscious beliefs and understandings. So we are in time of Lent, and let us spend this time. We don't have much time left. This year it seems like Lent passed by really fast. Is it because we're not suffering enough during the time of Lent that it passed by so fast? But at least for the remainder of this time, including the Passion Week, let us try to weigh our own actions and words. Second, our hearts are weighed. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 12. If you say, "See, we did not know this," does he not consider it who weighs the heart? And does he not know it who keeps your soul? And will he not render to man according to his work? See, once again, the work is mentioned here, but the work comes from the heart. And where is the heart? When we talk about this heart, where is your heart? Which heart is this talking about? This heart? Pumping blood? It's not just taking out the heart and weighing it, right? This heart is not speaking about the literal heart that pumps blood here. What heart is this? It's the mind. It's the gut. I shared with you before when they said mind in the biblical times, they considered kidney, the organ that weighs the most. Kidney or guts, the organ that really decides your emotions. How does kidney or gut decide what you feel and your emotions? Do you get irritated when you're hungry? Do we move and do we get motivated when it is all about feeling this gut? That's the gut feeling, right? More than my heart, it's my gut that moves me. It's my innards that make me do things to satisfy. That's the heart. In other words, what is my intention? What is my motivation? What's the drive? What causes me this drive? That is the heart. And he weighs the heart. People say, "Oh, I did this, because of that." But this Proverbs 24 verse 12 is saying, do you think God does not know your original intention? Why you did this? Do you not know that God weighs your heart? He knows your gut. He knows the deep inside of your head, what you're thinking and what you want. Psalm 62 verse 9, men of low degree are only vanity, and men of rank are a lie. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than breath. He says, man, when I weigh them, they are lighter than breath. How light is your breath? Have you ever been in a very cold winter weather and you breathe out? You can see your breath going up or down. Up. How light does it have to be in order to defy the law of gravity and go up? It's very light. It's that light, lighter than the air. And he says, man, you guys, he's telling us, you are lighter than the breath. We are nothing. It is only when he puts his word that we become something significant, some kind of weight. And then third, did I skip? I think it skipped. Third, he says, you shall burn in the fire. One third you shall burn in fire. 1/3 you strike it with the sword, and 1/3 scatter to the wind. What redemptive historical lesson does this have? Ezekiel 5:12. 1/3, he says, 1/3 you will die by plague or be consumed by famine among you. And 1/3 you will fall by the sword around you. And 1/3 I will scatter to every wind, and I will unsheath a sword behind them. So God explained and interpreted this in the following verse, later verses. Verse 12. 1/3, this is mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 2, but the explanation is in verse 12. I'll read it again. 1/3 of you will die by plague or be consumed by famine among you. Okay? And 1/3 will fall by the sword around you, and 1/3 I will scatter. So 1/3 burn in fire, death by plague and famine. 1/3 strike with the sword, meaning they will fall by the sword. Okay? And Ezekiel 17:21, it says, all the choice men in all his troops will fall by the sword, and the survivors will be scattered to every wind, and you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken. Ezekiel 39, verse 23. Ezekiel 39:23. The nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile for their iniquity, because they acted treacherously against me, and I hid my face from them. So I gave them into the hand of their adversaries, and all of them fell by the sword. And 1/3 I will scatter, diaspora, taken to many nations, taken to Babylon, and then from there scattered around. Leviticus 26, verse 33 says, you, however, I will scatter among the nations, and will draw out a sword after you, as your land becomes desolate and your cities become waste. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. However, the Lord will scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, and there you shall serve other gods, wood and stone, which you or your fathers have not known. We have to realize, biblically, one of the reasons why we have to go to church, or one of the reasons why we have to obey God, not only for ourselves, but for our children, next generation. Why? Because if these people disobeyed God and did not worship God correctly, and as a result, they were taken to Babylon. What about the children that are born in Babylon? He says, you will not be able to worship or serve God. And you will be forced to serve other gods and worship idols. And those children that were born there will not have a choice than to learn to serve idols and worship other gods. What an unfortunate generation that will be. Because of our sins. Because of the parents' sins. Yesterday I met with a person whose parents are Christians and the whole family is Christian and goes to church, but then he's so quote unquote busy doing improving his life, become busy trying to become successful in this world, busy trying to get married, and so on. So one thing I told him, if you don't want to go to church for yourself, at least go to church for your kids. There will be a difference when a child is born and learns to worship God from young age. If you don't like God, it's okay, but at least if you want your kid to be successful and kid to be well, then teach the kid to worship God. You don't have to learn. Teach your kid. Give the child an opportunity by coming to church. I don't know if that registered. I don't know why I said that. And that probably ruined his dinner for him. He was taking me out to dinner, and he said, "Wow, Pastor, I wanted to treat you out to dinner," because I said, If you don't come to church, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know why I became such a bad pastor, but I should have said thank you and insinuated, But really, it was for his good. I'm really praying that will really penetrate into his heart. And I asked him, do you want a kid when you get married? He's going to get married soon. Do you want a child? He didn't say anything, but his wife-to-be seems to want. That's why I said, okay, it's my chance. Kid. Parents would do anything for the kid. And I know an elders in our church, not in Zion Church, but one of the branch churches, whose dad was not a believer. I think he was Buddhist or Confucianist. But he somehow paid extra money to send his children to Christian school. Why? Because he was a businessman, he couldn't be around to watch over the kids all the time. So he thought, I don't know why, he thought if I send them to Christian school, at least they will teach them the right morals and keep them from doing the wrong things. Lo and behold, they became elders and deacons in Pyeonggang Church, right? And I believe that God will give some kind of credit to the dad, although until he passed away, was not a believer. But it does work. And when I heard that story, I said, wow, how can you not believe in God but believe that God will take care of my kids? Right? And he did. God did, right? And so I realized, wow, even if he thinks that he doesn't want to believe, parents would do something that is good for the child. I don't know. Doesn't make sense, but it works. It worked. So that's God's grace, and we need to think about when we want to, when we are in a dilemma, whether to obey or to give in to the temptation. Let us remember, even if you don't have a child, at least for the next generation, at least for my family, at least for my nephew and niece, at least for my parents, what I do may cause some great blessing for them. What I don't do may, in the end, bring greater blessings for the next generation. Psalm 44, verse 11. You give us as sheep to be eaten and have scattered us among the nations. So again, continuously God spoke through his prophets about gave warnings to the people of Israel. If you don't worship me correctly, if you don't obey me, then I will scatter you. Jeremiah 6:19, same thing. Hear, O earth, behold, I am bringing disaster on this people, the fruit of their plans, because they have not listened to my words, and as for my law, they have rejected it also. And then fourth thing that God told Ezekiel to do, and this one he says, I will unsheathe the sword behind them. After the three things, what's the first thing? Shave yourself. Second thing, weigh and divide. Third, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And then, fourth, he says, I will unsheathe a sword behind them. What's the last 1/3? Strike with the sword and then scatter them, right? Last 1/3, scatter them. Scatter them, and then he says, I will unsheathe a sword behind them. What does that mean? I will let the sword fall. Scatter them, and they will be scattered, but they will still be alive, right? What happens when the unsheathed sword follows them? They will go over there and die. they will go over there and be destroyed. This is like, I will make sure to see the end of them. Ezekiel 12:14, I will scatter to every wind all who are around him, his helpers and all his troops, and I will draw out a sword after them. Can you see the seriousness of God's warning here? I believe those who are wise will take this warning to ourselves as we are living in this end time. And then fifth, take also a few in number from them and bind them in the edges of your robes. This is speaking about the remnants. I will do all that, I will strike them, I will let the sword follow after them, but then, even in the midst of that, what seems to be a complete destruction, I will save a few. Romans chapter 9, verse 27. Isaiah cries out concerning Israel, though the number of the sons of Israel be like the sand of the sea, it is the remnant that will be saved. And he's quoting Isaiah 6:13. Yet there will be a tenth portion in it, and it will again be subject to burning, like a terebinth or an oak whose stump remains when it is felled. The holy seed is its stump. The stump, what is the stump? After you cut the tree, whatever is left at the bottom, something that you cannot really cut off, right? That is stump. But he says the holy seed is its stump. What remains? He's speaking about the remnants of the end time. And some of these remnants will be thrown into fire. What? So let me recap. How many percent will be destroyed? He said, cut off the beard and the hair, and one third. What is that? That's 100%. But from there, just take a little bit and put it at the edge of the robe, right? But even from those remnants, not all of them will survive. What did he say? Some of these remnants will be thrown into fire. This is Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 4. Take again some of them and throw them into the fire and burn them in the fire. For from it the fire will spread to all the house of Israel. So in the end, this is the judgment. Some will fall by the sword, some will be scattered, but then later they will fall by the sword, right? And there will be some remnants saved, but even among the remnants, there will be some that will be thrown into fire. How many will be saved? The Bible says a number that a child can count at the top of. You shake the fruit tree until all the fruits fall down, and only a few left at the top. I pray and bless you in the name of the Lord that we, Zion Church, will be the remnants. But that is not enough. We need to be the remnants of the remnants. Because among the remnants, there will also be some that will be thrown into fire. How difficult, how hard is this to pass? So we will think about something that's very similar that Jesus told us. Jesus in his parable. Matthew 13, verses 47 through 50. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea, and gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, They drew it up on the beach, and they sat down and gathered the good fish into containers, but the bad they threw away. So it will be at the end of the age, the angels will come forth and take out the wicked from among the righteous, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So the sea, the ocean, is like the world. The dragnet is like the church. So dragnet is thrown into the ocean, and the fish that come into the net are the people that are saved, right? They come into the church that are saved. And so those he draws up to the beach, and from those who are in the net are the people who are in the church. Those who claim to have been saved. So he draws them up, and from there he does the separating again, dividing. But the expression here is, I will pick out the wicked from the righteous, meaning they were all considered or labeled, quote unquote, righteous people. They're all Christians, so to speak. But among them he will pick out the wicked. Let us ask ourselves, am I the wicked that will be picked out? Up until now, the message is, God says, I know your heart. I weigh your heart. I know the intentions of all your life. I know what you do when nobody sees. I know what you do when you think that I'm not watching. And will you be the wicked or the righteous? Do you have a facade or a mask or a label that you're righteous, but deep inside, are you actually the wicked that will be picked out? So during this time of Lent, I pray that we may not lose this opportunity. Take this chance to have a quiet time, to reflect upon ourselves. I realize when He gives me an opportunity to reflect and repent, but I don't take that opportunity, He causes me to do it. I hope that's not your case. Do you know how He causes me to do it? Probably no. Some of you might know. Something happens that makes me reflect. Kind of like how I teach my children. I give them an opportunity, give them a warning. But if they don't reflect, they don't realize, I will make them reflect. Go to your room and don't come out until you repent. So let us seriously take this opportunity. And this is conclusion. Ezekiel's obedience, despite extreme shame and insult. For Ezekiel to obey this, he had to swallow up this great shame and insult. Why? Because, look, Leviticus 21 verse 5. They shall not make any baldness on their heads, nor shave off the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts in their flesh. This is the law for the Israelites, especially the priests, or people in the line of priests. So, you might be able to think about something that is so out of the norm in this society, that if you do it, they will really, really make ridicule you and make, point fingers at you. What is that in this world? I cannot really think of anything right now. But Ezekiel would lose all his credit, all his respect, all his friends by doing this. This is a really serious act. 2 Samuel chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. So Hanun took David's servants and shaved off half of their beards, and cut off their garments in the middle, in the middle as far as their hips, and sent them away. So King David sent his servants on a mission, and Hanun to basically giving David a middle finger kind of thing. Okay? Just to spite David, he cut off half of their beard. I'm wondering, is it this way half or this way half? This way. I don't know. Either way, this is something he did to shame them, give them a great shame. And it says the garments up to their hips, and so this is against the law, right? It probably for these servants, they were probably resisting as though Hanun was about to cut off their fingers. That bad, right? That shameful. Verse 5, when they told it to David, he sent to meet them, for the men were greatly humiliated. And the king said, "Stay at Jericho until your beards grow and then return." How shameful it must have been that they could not even come home. Right? I'm thinking they could have just covered and come home and just stayed at home until it grows back. How long would it take if it was cut this way half? How long would it take for the beard to grow this way once again? So they had to stay away from home in Jericho until probably at least months or years even. That's how shameful it was for them not to be able to come back to their city. Ezekiel, in order to obey God, he had to swallow this. All his pride, despite the great shame he would have had to face, people would not even talk to him. But because he loved God, because he is a servant and prophet of God, secondly, because he knew how serious God was in terms of judging the Israelites, and so it was a message. In order to give that message, he had to sacrifice himself. How much do we sacrifice in order to follow God? How much dire and urgent heart do we have? Remember, God weighs our hearts. What kind of attitude do we have? So during this time of Lent, let us ask ourselves, how much have I tried to ponder upon Jesus' suffering? This time of Lent is a time for us to share or partake of Jesus' sufferings, right? At least to think about it and think about why Jesus had to suffer. And that is because of my sin. So at least if we are a decent human being, we should spend some time, rather than trying to seek for and look for my enjoyment, my relaxation. It's a time when we have to really try to refrain from those sins. What have we done to come closer to God? It's not too late. I pray that from today and next week that you would delete all the games from your phones. And you would stop whatever that you are doing that takes up so much time, including myself. I'm talking to myself too. That takes up so much time and so much energy, so much of my heart. And when you delete your games, you're going to say, well, all these spare time, what am I going to do? read the Bible or pray. Try that. You think I'm joking and you think this is a light thing. I realize nowadays this is not a very light thing to be considered very lightly. Because people do spend hours after hours on the phone. I think I need to turn off my phone for the week or something. I find myself not always games, but always looking at my phone. And I feel very empty, I feel very insecure if my phone is not anywhere near me. I need to cut that off. Think about what we need to cut off in order to spend some more time with God, some more time reflecting. Anything to give us more time to pray and read the Bible. Come on, it's just 10 days. Do you think you can invest 10 days for God out of this year? Of course, I know you're going to spend more days throughout the year doing God's work and focusing on God. But symbolically, at least these 10 days. We wasted away the 30 days already. Maybe you didn't, I did. I'm being honest here. But the remaining, these Passion Week plus, how many days do we have left? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 10 days. Can we dedicate to God? You think, you're wondering, why is he dragging? Because I'm not hearing any amen here. I'm not going to finish until I hear everybody say amen. You know I changed. I was telling that guy, at least go to church for your kid. I've changed. I've become weird, stubborn pastor now. I don't know, environment changes you. When you have people so stubborn not to say amen, the pastor will become stubborn. This service will not end until 10, 11, 12, until everybody says amen. And when you say amen, God is hearing, listening to you. And God weighs your heart. Are you going to delete your games from your phones? Amen. Your computers too. Amen. Your iPads or tablets too. Whatever that is taking me on, whatever you feel guilty about, let's not do that this week and next week. At least this week and next week. And then try not to do it after that too. So are we together here? It's not going to be easy. But let's try, let's do it. Just 10 days for God, for Jesus. He gave us what? Does he not deserve that at least? If not, bring $1 million. I don't know. We cannot do that. We cannot do something big for God. At least do something that I can. To say, God, Jesus, this is one thing I can do for you. To say thank you. Amen?
Amen.
Let's pray.